Hi, and welcome to All the Woo A to Z. We're your hosts, Suzanne.
And Mychal, and this is season 2.
Hi, this is Suzanne, and probably like most of the country, I've been staying warm this week.
And I'm Mychal. I am still diligently trying to follow my doctor's instructions, and this is
All the Woo.
A to Z. This episode is going to be M for manifestation. As always, this is our metaphysical, metaphorical,
All the ickles.
non-judgmental table that we have here for you, where we are discussing these topics with our own personal experiences and understandings and just personal opinions also on these topics, and just at the very least hope that you are entertained.
So pull up a chair and let's get started. Mychal, what are we drinking?
So for this, I'm choosing what's known as a Super Tuscan. This is by Gaja, is the producer. It's an Italian winery, and they produce a lot of different wines, but one in particular is I'm using one from their Marcanda selection, which is called Magari. This is a Super Tuscan that is a mix of three different grapes: Cabernet Franc, Cabernet Sauvignon, and Petit Verdot. And for this one, it is bigger and richer and fuller and plumper, and there's a lot of crippiness to it. There's just a lot of things going on. You can age it for a long period of time. It is
Good on a cold day.
It is very good on a cold day so that works out really well for us right now. But the reason why I'm picking this wine is because, well, first of all, if you ever look into the story of Gaja, it's fun and fascinating. A lot of Italian wineries are like this. I always love to hear the stories behind them and the families behind them because it is very entertaining. This one in particular. So Marcanda actually translates to House of Perpetual Negotiation. And one of the reasons why it has that name is because the family of Gaja was negotiating with this other family for this plot of land for forever. Like it was perpetual negotiation, like it was never ending. And then finally, when it finally all got resolved, then they named it that, Marcanda. Magari actually translates to, there's a lot of different kind of translations to this. It can, if you look at their website, they have it as if only it was true, or maybe, or if you just Google it, it'll have it as perhaps. So all of these kind of, what ifs, potentials, like that kind of things as to what it translates to. And so for the story of this particular wine, I really associate it to this idea of manifesting, having this dream, this knowingness of something that was going to work out, and still constantly working towards that end goal. And then finally achieving that. The potentials that are there lying within this by doing something different, by doing something new, by kind of going against the grain, which manifestation doesn't necessarily need to be going against the grain, but in their position they were. And just really short history on what makes a Super Tuscan is not just that it's really good, it's super. But traditionally, Tuscany only produced Chianti wines, and you can only use certain kind of grapes in order to do that. So Super Tuscan is more like the artistic expression of the area. So not using the traditional grapes, going against everything that everybody has known previously. And now
Innovative Tuscan?
Correct.
Gotcha.
Really. Although it did get the nickname Super Tuscan by a wine critic being like, wow, this is really a Super Tuscan. Like that's actually kind of where it came from. But ultimately, it's the non-traditional way of going about things. So that's why I'm coming up with this pairing as for manifestation.
Manifestation.
Yeah.
So when Mychal and I began to discuss this as a potential topic, we kind of we're both a little peevish about most of the uses of the term manifestation.
Yes. Yeah.
It came very close to being a B word.
It's a very clickbaity term. I think that is often overused and misunderstood and meant to be kind of a plug and play description of how to do things.
And with us both being really hard workers,
yes,
I think the easy, one and done kind of concept that a lot of people have is
not fully accurate.
Well, that, and also pretty offensive to us in a way, because
I know.
it's so one of the things that Mychal and I agree on is that as you are picking the thing that you want to manifest, then the deciding that that's what you want to be requires all the steps to becoming that thing. And by doing the things to make you become that thing, you become that thing.
Yes.
And so you do manifest what you have chosen, but you have to do the work.
Yeah, there is also a visualizing component to it. Yes, there's also a feeling emotional part and knowingness to it. Yes, there are, but it's also like, it's not just I put in an order and something just comes down the pike for me. It's an interactive, a co-creation, if you will. It's not just I ask and something is just delivered.
And one of the things that she and I were discussing was, I'm telling you this, gentle listener, is that because you have to have a capacity to receive the thing that you're asking for. And generally speaking, when you want something you don't have, you don't have it because you don't have the capacity for it. And so if you are living in an apartment and ask for $1 million and you got $1 million the next day, you most likely, and I think we can look at a lot of lottery winners and see this, you don't have the capacity, the wisdom, the understanding, the comprehension, the depth to know what to do with $1 million. Like, how do we even deposit $1 million in the bank? Like, how many days does it stay being, verified that it came from someplace so that you're not actually laundering money? All of those different things.
Do you need a tax attorney? Like, do you need to hire lawyers of all different kinds? Like, all of a sudden your world becomes really complex and a lot of more than you may realize that it's going to be, like, so having to respond to
the most thing you've ever handled is $1,000, then $1 million is going to, in fact, probably end up hurting you in a lot of ways. So you have to build the capacity to hold the space to be someone who knows what to do with $1 million.
All of this to say, so the question that we're going to attach to this, because I don't know that we've actually posed the question, but to give you, now that you have a little bit of the background, maybe if you've listened to our first season, you'll know that for B, for balance and breath work, they were both triggering words for each of us.
And we're not triggered by this. We just want to attach a whole bunch of codicils to it.
Correct. But it might be like, why does it irk us so much? That might be part of the question that we're answering here. But also in that, how are we understanding this as people? Not to say that we're standing here as master manifestors, but having each of us having experienced what it was like to, on multiple occasions, really manifest it, like have that seed idea, that belief, that knowing, that vision of something that most other people would have seen as being unattainable from that standpoint of where you were, to then obtaining that thing on the back end. So all of the steps in between and knowing that this was different than just being like, well, I'm just working towards something because,
or I wish I had a thing. Yeah.
Right. Like, it's a very different, I think that if you've really done it to some kind of extreme, you can identify that moment of that first beginning and really at the back end, maybe dissect what made it successful in the end. I hope that's clear. So maybe,
why don't you start with your manifestation story?
Okay, so I have a couple. Let's see. Which one should I tell for? Should I do this chronologically or should I do
We don't have all day, Mychal.
I know, right? Let's see. Maybe the shorter story might be best. So the shortest story is I was living in Chicago, living on my own, early 20s. I was trying to make it as a professional ballet and modern dancer. I was also working in restaurants as a server, like was really hustling to try to eke by. I was very stressed out. by money at that
Mhm.
time. I was doing everything I could. All of my time was dedicated either towards working towards my goal with dance and trying to make money that way, or else working all my extra time, picking up shifts and serving in
Mhm.
restaurants, right? But bills kept on piling up and I kept on getting stressed out and not seeing how it was all going to work out for me. I'm like, I'm
Mhm.
going on a downward trajectory here. these 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 points are not meeting
Mm.
as far as need and ability to supply.
Mhm.
And I remember very distinctly one evening, and I know that the story is not unusual for a lot of people. I hear the story from a lot of
Mhm.
other people who have similar kind of experiences, that I just had this moment in one of like my night prayer sessions where it's just like, you know what? I'm done. Like
Mhm.
I'm done worrying about this. It is not, I'm doing everything that I can do on
Mhm.
my end. There's nothing else that I can make it work. I don't know how this is going to work out, but I'm going to give it up to you.
Mhm.
I'm going to put it on your plate and trust that you have a plan of how this is all going to work out. But from this point forward in my life, I'm just going to say, if I need money, I'm going to trust that you're going to get it to me, whatever I need in order to take care of whatever it is I need to take care of. That's it. And
Mhm.
I really, truly felt in that moment, I was declaring in my authority in that way also all that worry truly out of my body. It wasn't a hoping, it wasn't any kind of like weird, it's just
Mhm.
a full on knowing this is not on my plate anymore.
Mhm.
And I'm giving it up.
Mhm.
Like that's it. And then it was, and I slept great that night. I felt,
Mhm. Yeah.
all the stress was gone. I'm like, I don't know how it's going to work out, but okay. 2 days later in the mail, I got a check for $5,000, which was way more money than I needed at the time in order to take care of what it is that I needed to do.
You can't see it, but I'm nodding.
Yeah, she's nodding. And granted, it was a personal loan that was given to me by my bank that I had not asked for. They were
Mhm.
just like, "We think that maybe you might need a personal loan. So here it is, and if you cash it, then these are the terms." Like that's
Mhm.
how it worked out. And I realize I don't always suggest to people to take out loans to take care of your debts or anything like that. But I I didn't need to like just spend all that money. The plan was like, okay,
Mhm.
well, I'm going to use this is my cushion and this is my buffer that I needed to get me through.
Mhm.
And the part that I don't need to use, I'll save to help so I have money to help start to pay it back. And it actually worked out. It really was not a burden on me at all
Mhm.
for how that all worked out, but it was, even to this day, I remind myself when I start to get stressed out about money, I'm like, no, I just know that if there's something that I need to take care of, that it'll work itself out
Mhm.
and that the money will show up. So also on the other side of that, when money starts to show up in my life, like
Mhm.
more than what I normally have, I normally think, well, this is probably supposed to be for something.
So to your point, you were doing everything you could. There was no other way.
Yeah, for me to bring in money.
Right. So, so I think that's a very valid point. But I also think that, you know, in a way, it's trying maybe to show you like dream a little bigger.
Hmm.
Like just because money's coming in and you're like, oh no, what's
Yeah,
what's about to
right.
break? Um, that maybe the changing of that to I can handle more or
Yes.
something along that line. But I I think one of the things about the mismanagement of how people talk about manifestation
Hmm.
is as though it's not attached.
Right.
So it's just a thing that's outside of you.
Hmm.
And I know in writing, I used to always really stress to my students, like, love doing this. Because if you do really well, if you get the book contract and you get the, accolades and all that,
Yeah.
your reward is to do it again.
Write some more.
Yeah.
You have to
So
love the act of writing.
so if you don't love doing it and you're just trying to
Yes.
get to the end, then do something else to get to the end because the only reward in this really
Mhm.
is another 9 months of sitting by yourself in a room.
Yeah.
And so I think that's maybe one of the things, at least as I was taught manifestation, and I'm
Mhm.
doing this in quotation marks, because I think, like a lot of people probably, it was through the oh so famous movie.
Mhm.
And the idea of you have to feel it in order to activate kind of those muscles for it. I didn't understand that
Yeah.
at all.
But also realistically, if it's something that you've never truly felt before, how can you really know what it feels like if it's so outside of the box for you? It can be really difficult to know what something like that feels like.
And I think that's probably why people end up wanting the thing that will get them the thing that they want.
Yes.
So, like, if what you really want is to have a ton of freedom and no schedule,
Mhm.
then wanting a bunch of money and responsibility at work is probably not what's going to get you that.
Correct.
But you can't.
Yeah. It's kind of like winning the lottery, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like you went from maybe making a little more than minimum wage and you won the lottery. Great. Awesome. But if you're trying to manifest winning the lottery, the point of winning the lottery probably is so that you don't have to stress about finances anymore, right? But realistically, if you won the lottery, you've just compounded that problem.
Yeah. To be clear to anybody who's listening, we are happy to be in that compounded situation.
Absolutely.
We
I
will
have a plan.
grow and mature.
Oh, yeah. I have planned on what would happen. I'm prepared for that scenario.
No, and I think that's absolutely, what is it? Fortune favors the prepared.
Correct. Yeah. I have
And
a
so,
plan of what I would do step by step, day by day, of like realizing the excitement of I have those numbers. Yes.
are you going to continue having a podcast? I'm asking for a friend.
Yes. Because it's not about not doing those things, right? It's what I would really enjoy is being able to open up doing some of the other things that I've been financially blocked from doing. Not realizing that it's probably not going to create more time for me. I know
Mhm.
that. I also know it's not going to create more happiness for me or any of those things. As a matter of fact, well, I'm not going to divulge all of my plans and what I'm going to do, but a lot of the money is probably not going to stay with me.
Right.
And, I think a lot of people, what is it? There's a saying, I think it's like, well, yeah, with great power comes great responsibility. But I think that it's true in a financial way too, that if you're
Yeah.
granted with more than the average bear's worth of wealth, that you also have a certain responsibility with that
Yeah.
as well. But
Yeah.
that's just me. Think what you think.
Share it around.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think that's one of the, stories that are one of the principles that Charles Dickens was trying to teach with Scrooge.
Hmm.
And, if you have all of this, then you take care of those who can't.
Yeah.
So,
So, Suzanne, do you recall a very specific time in your life where you're like, man, I manifested that and probably seemed maybe out of reach to some other outsiders?
I would say probably my first publishing contract.
Hmm.
And it's so I had done the research, I had written the book, I had done the comparative studies. So by the time I was dipping my toe into New York publishing, I I felt I was the best product out there,
Yeah.
and I had always known, just always, that I would be published someday.
Yeah.
It wasn't like one day. It was just kind of like, huh, okay, that'll happen.
Yeah.
And I remember I was in a program that made an opportunity for me to meet people in New York. And I remember getting on the plane and being kind of like, okay, they have to pick somebody.
Hmm.
They have to continue publishing books. And my book, I've read everything comparative.
Hmm.
I is in the same categories.
Yes.
And it's right up there.
Hmm.
And so they have to pick somebody. Why not me?
Yeah.
So it wasn't I'm the best in the world kind of thing. And it wasn't, oh, I want this so badly. It was just kind of like, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, me.
Of course. It was
Um,
a knowingness of it. But it was also a knowingness backed up by the fact that you had prepared yourself to be prepared for
Yeah.
that situation, right? To stand up against all the other people that you were being compared to have the quality of writing that, All of those things
Yeah,
kind of coming into play.
to be as much of the full package as
Correct.
anybody needed at the time. So, yeah, so I would say that, and there have been things that I just not manifested out of thin air, but there have been some things where it was like, "Oh, I didn't even realize that's what I was doing." It was just I was so focused
Mhm.
on that objective,
Mhm.
and to the point of when it happened, I almost didn't recognize it.
Oh, yeah.
So there have been times like that where it's like, "Oh, wow, okay, that
Yeah.
that was faster than I imagined," or, I thought I would be, have to be 10 years older for that or whatever.
Mhm.
But I think for me, the part about manifestation that is the truest is that it's what you what you want to have happen as the end result.
Yes.
Not, I wanna get married because I have wanna have a pretty wedding. It's, I wanna get married because I wanna live my life with my soulmate,
Mhm.
that kind of thing. And so recognizing what is the thing that you're actually trying to achieve with this energy
Mhm.
and with this desire. And I think that's one of the places where we have to shake off family, friends, social media, all those things that tell you what you should want and be like, no, this is actually what I want.
Mhm.
And accept understand what the stages of that are.
Yeah. All the work that okay. With this, I'm gonna tell my other story. I'll try to make it very quick. This one was when I was younger. I was about, I was like 13, 14 years old. For dance, I was not a child prodigy. A lot of what although I did have talent and all that,
Mhm.
a lot of it came through hard work. So this was kind of a defining moment for me. This is for Nutcracker, which a lot of people should know exactly what I'm talking about here. So there was one
It's
year,
like a wave of trauma response going through the
yes,
listenership.
exactly. For me, for Nutcracker, that's exactly after so many years of doing it.
You just put on the music and watch her blood pressure.
Go high. Yes, I was not, I was cast in most traditional little girl kind of roles across the board, just so you can fill out the production, that kind of thing. And I had really thought, I'm like, man, I really wanted to be Clara. I wasn't
Who's the
even,
star,
yeah,
just in case you
the
don't know?
star, the main character, if you
She gets
will.
the Nutcracker.
She does. And I wasn't even, considered to be understudy or anything like that, like in my mind. Not that I was there, but like I kind of understood. But at the same time, I'm like, man. And I remember the very moment sitting in my parents' car, they were driving, I was in the back seat, I was staring out the window, and I just had like this determined knowingness in my gut, like next year, I'm gonna be Clara. That is gonna happen. And
And as I was saying to Michael when she told this story to me the first time, this is the beginning of the horror Netflix episode Christmas movie that they haven't done yet.
they have not done yet. The determined
The German
preteen.
13-year-old who is gonna take them all out.
Yeah, right. No, that did not happen, to be clear. There's no nefarious actions on my behalf whatsoever. But and I remember just feeling it and like knowing it and like this surge of like power in
Mhm.
my body. And I declared it to my parents. I just came out like they weren't a total different topic. It's like next year I'm gonna be Clara. And my parents just looked at each other and they're like, okay. If you talk to them now, they would tell you like definitely was probably not likely or in the cards for me to have that
Which one
happen.
of us gave her a candy bar? Like, I don't know.
Yeah. They were like, okay. All right. They didn't tell me no, that couldn't happen. They didn't do any of that, but they just said, okay. And I was like, all right. And I remember just like sitting there staring. And I'm like, okay, what's my game plan? How am I going to make this happen? So the next year I just worked and I went, obviously took all the classes, but I would come home, I'd practice at home. I'd use all my spare time at home to make my technique better, to work my flexibility, to make my point more, like all the things, anything I could
This
potentially
is
do.
why she ended up having knee surgery just a few days ago.
Also, yes, FYI. Uh-huh. And so I put in all of that extra time and determination, and that's how I focused my energy, and like, because that was my end goal, is that that's what
Mhm.
I wanted. And then when it came time for casting the next year, I was not cast as Clara, but I was cast as the understudy, and I was like, okay, acceptable. But I'm still going to work really, really hard, right?
And no, she did not poison the
I did not.
Clara. However,
However, I just still didn't do anything. But the person who was cast as Clara, unfortunately, I'm sorry for her, but she did injure herself and she could not dance. She had to take some time off of dance. And so I was the understudy. My dance teacher came to me and I remember this conversation very tensely. So we made eye contact. I was like, oh gosh, what's going to happen? And he was like, I just want you to know that just because you're the understudy, I do not have to give it to you. It is not a given that you are put into this role as understudy. I was like, okay, yes. He's like, okay.
ballet is tough, y'all.
He's like, that being said, I am going to give it to you because I know how hard you are going to work to make it be as good as you can. And, in order to raise yourself to the level that it needs to be for the performance. I was like, uh-huh. He's like, okay. I was like, all right. I was like, yes.
Yay!
Yes, I know. And so I was. And I was also Clara the following year. And my parents will even tell you to this day, it kind of blew their mind. They did not think that that could have been a potential or possibility for me at the time, but that I had made that happen, not just for that I made the understudy, but I actually I claimed it and that I really owned it in that moment in time. So kind of reverse engineering all the things that happen in order to make that occur. Like there was a vision, a knowingness, a definite goal, right?
A time frame.
A time frame.
And I think that's a big thing that gets lost.
Yes, time frame as well. And then all of the extra work, knowing the steps that I needed to take in order to achieve.
And they were incremental.
Yes.
As opposed to, what were you talking about earlier? The Simpsons?
It wasn't The Simpsons. It's from South Park.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. I don't know if I'm okay to say it. But so there's these underpants gnomes on South Park. And they steal underpants, and it shows their board,
Their business strategy.
Their business strategy. They're like, step 1 is steal underpants. Step 2, step
Crickets.
3, profit. That there's no middle part. Step 2, that there's no work to get you to the end goal. There's just the original idea and an end point. Yes. Yeah.
So yes. So this was no underpants situation.
No, it was not.
All those incremental steps that led you to.
Right.
So I guess what we're trying to say in terms of manifestation is, yes, it is very woo.
It is very woo.
But it is also has an underbracing of actual action.
Yeah, there's a definite co-creation quality to this. It's not just I put in the order and the universe delivers. It is you put in the order, the universe participates.
It's not Santa Claus.
Yeah, you participate as well to make yourself as ready and prepared to be able to receive something like that too, right?
Because the way to become Clara is to become Clara.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Right.
And so I guess we're ready for our next letter.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
I think we've talked all about the manifestation.
Going to manifest a letter, incremental steps, reaching into the basket, pulling out a
A.
It's an A.
A. Da-dun-dun. Okay. Well, I guess join us next time
On All the Woo, A to Z.